So you've been looking at this and you've said, wow, demo locks are doing really well on the meters in Mythic Plus. Well, how right you are, friends. I am still gearing my Warlock up and I find myself keeping up with very good geared players, especially in high density Mythic Plus, and it's amazing. I haven't felt this way in a very long time. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. Talents, rotation, gear, everything that you need to know about Demonology Warlocks in Mythic Plus situations. There are a few builds you can take into account, and the talents are not set in stone. They also differ depending on what affixes you have each week. I will go over the main ones that a lot of people use and what I think would be good to start with. You can always try and test them out yourself and see what works. The first row gives you two options between Demonic Strength and Bile Scourge Bombers. As of now, I recommend taking Demonic Strength. It's great for AoE and single target as well, plus it helps you repositioning your pet, so that's always a plus. You can play around with Bile Scourge Bombers if you want in heavily stacked pools. Second row, I recommend taking Demonic Calling over Doom. Demonic Calling is more reliable, helps limiting the shards you spend on Dreadstalkers, freeing them up to be used for Hand of Gul'dans, plus it doesn't depend on mobs living for over 30 seconds, which in most cases they won't unless you are running super high keys or there's bolstering affixes. Next row is a preference based row. A lot of people use Dark Pact, which is the strongest if you can predict the damage incoming and pop it while at full HP. I would recommend starting off with Demon Skin. It's a very good survivability talent, and once you get the hang of your Warlock and have a feel for the incoming damage, you can consider Dark Pact. Next row is a toss-up between Soul Strike and Vile Fiend. I recommend Soul Strike. It generates shards which we need for Hand of Gul'dans to make them juicy AoEs. Vile Fiend is a more of a single target option that works wonders with Nether Portal. Level 75 talents, again, down to your choice. A lot of Warlocks these days go with Mortal Coil. I tried to make a good use out of it, but so far didn't need it as much as I thought, but maybe I'm not playing it right. You can take Dark Fury or Demonic Circle, which are both viable options, with Dark Fury being the most reliable on the row in my opinion. Level 90 row, again a choice between two contenders. Soul Conduit is what I would recommend. In an ideal M+ run, you would be in your rotation pretty often, going pack after pack, and the shard generation Conduit provides keeps you from having to cast too many Shadow Bolts. Grimoire Felguard is your second option if you feel you need a lot of on-demand burst. Last row, Demonic Consumption is still the best choice on the row. It affects the rotation a bit, but pretty much all talents on this row have their respective rotation. Nether Portal is simming good and you can opt for it if you want, but it's more of a single target option. And with the Tyrant being on a 1.5 minute cooldown, you will realistically use it on boss fights and once or twice in between boss fights, which gives you a really nice DPS output throughout the whole dungeon. The general stat weights are as follows, but this is not the best rule to follow, especially since our best Azerite traits give us massive amounts of haste, making our more ideal stat weights look something like this. This is what my stats are simming like, and I only have one of these OP haste traits, which I will talk about in a minute. Moving to gear, every piece of gear is a big stat stick, so when you are choosing what to equip, follow the stat weights that your character is simming. To sim your character, go to raidbots.com, add your character details either by loading it based on your server and name, or by using the Simulation Craft add-on. We made a video on this on our channel. That being said, trinkets do not factor into this gearing rule since they have unique effects. Also, come 8.1.5, we will have some unique items from the new raid as well. I will make sure to update you guys once that happens. But in the meantime, let's talk trinkets. This is a simulated result of how much DPS output the best trinkets have. Some of the trinkets on the list can be found in world quests and bosses, which I will avoid discussing because their eye level will be capped at around 370. And if you do any key whatsoever, the gear you get from dungeons will be higher in eye level. Not to mention that heroic raiding also provides better trinkets than endlessly farming these ones. So I'll talk about two trinkets in particular. Balefire Branch is one of these that can drop from Waycrest Manor. It's in the top ones for AoE situation and also for single target encounters. All around a solid pick. But if you also raid every now and again, you can opt for the Incandescent Sliver trinket that drops from Opulent, which is the second best trinket for dungeon scenarios and, again, pretty decent for raiding as well. Now on to the Azerite traits. This is how the traits look when simmed. As you can see, explosive potential is very strong compared to the rest. It also gets stronger when you start stacking them, which gives you this graph. Taking a closer look, we can observe that explosive potential has more than double the DPS potential of the second one on the list, which is Treacherous Covenant. This particular trait makes Demonology a top contender for dungeons and raiding alike. As such, it will be a must-have. The second one I recommend you have is Baleful Invocation, and you only need one of these. The damage factor stacks, of course, but you really want it for the 5 shard generation that it provides. Fill in the other slots with Treacherous Covenant if you can. As for the inner rings, Overwhelming Power is the strongest one, either as one of a kind or stacked multiple times. We will check the rotation in a second, but before that, consider following us on Facebook and Twitter. We do new class guides every week, plus we add a lot more content related to PvE and PvP and have a weekly WoW news show. So keep in touch with us with all of our content on MarcelianOnline. We already have a raiding guide to Demonology Warlock, which covers the basic single target focus rotation which you will be using for the bosses. I won't go over that here. Instead, I will talk about the priority system for AoE encounters so we can better understand how the fuck do Demo Warlocks do so much freaking damage. To keep things simple, I will go over the priority system based on the talent build I mentioned earlier, since otherwise I would have to mention over 20 abilities and when you would need to cast each individual one, and nobody wants that. As much as you can, try to always start the combat with a pre-casted Demon Bolt. The most important spell to keep on cooldown is Demonic Strength. Next up, Soul Strike, obviously not when you are at max shards already, but keep it on cooldown as much as you can. Call Dreadstalkers is the next most important spell to make sure you are always casting. Next up, weirdly enough, the Demonic Tyrant. A few mentions here. You would want the Tyrant with as many demons out already as possible, especially with at least 2 stacks of imps out so that the Tyrant can consume enough imps to be empowered. Next most important thing to make sure you have is 3 soul shards generated through Shadow Bolts, Demon Bolts or Soul Strike. Once you have 3 shards, you cast Hand of Gul'dan. If the targets are stacked decently tightly, you will need to implode, and that requires a more specific rotation, not a priority. There are 2 types of implosion rotations that we will talk about, and here you thought this was going to be too basic. But really, don't worry, it's not as complicated as it sounds. The first type of implosion rotation is when you have 3 shards and 2 stacks of Demonic Core. Demonic Core is the passive that makes our Demon Bolts instant, and it activates when our Imps and Dreadstalkers die. So, if you have 3 shards and at least 2 stacks of Demonic Core, first build up to 5 Soul Shards in total, keeping your 2 stacks of Demonic Core. Cast a Hand of Gul'dan, build up to 4 shards with an instant Demon Bolt, cast Hand of Gul'dan again, build up to 3 shards with your second Demon Bolt, cast the third Hand of Gul'dan. Then cast 2 Shadow Bolts back to back so you give your imps time to spawn. Finish up with Implosion. This was one of the implosion rotations. The idea is to cast 3 Hands of Gul'dan before imploding, and that can only be done with 2 instant Demon Bolts. The second way of doing the implosion rotation is without these 2 stacks. You start by building up to 5 Soul Shards. Cast a Hand of Gul'dan, build to 3 Soul Shards, cast your second Hand of Gul'dan, fill in with 2 Shadow Bolts or instant Demon Bolts if you have them, so that your imps can properly spawn. Then implode. A note to make here, since we will be using Soul Conduit. You'll have situations where this talent procs and you won't need to build shards, or maybe you need to build fewer. That just means that life is beautiful and your rotation speeds up. Take advantage of that and continue with the priority system I mentioned. For consumables, I recommend taking the haste enchant for rings and also the haste enchant for your weapon. Follow it up with haste gems and one intellect gem if you can afford it. The food will always favor the feast as the best one since it gives you a big chunk of your main stats. If you cannot afford a feast, just eat the highest haste food you can find. The flask will be the intellect one, and if you are super rich, get the intellect battle potions. Like and subscribe to our channel if you found this useful. And don't forget, we already have the rating guide for Demonology already up on our channel. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll catch you guys next time.